You ever wish your brain came with a user's guide? Well, today, we're cracking one open. We're going to dive deep into one of the most amazing and honestly misunderstood parts of it all, your memory. We're talking about how it really works.
Okay, so let me ask you something right off the bat. When you remember an event, do you think you're just hitting play on a perfect video recording stored in your head? It's a common idea, right? But the truth is, not even close. And the why is fascinating.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, what memory actually is. Then we'll get into its 3 basic stages. We'll even look at how your phone might be messing with it, why we all forget things, and get into the wild stuff, like when your memory totally lies to you. And don't worry, we'll finish up with some simple ways you can boost your own memory. All right, first up, what is memory really? The first thing you need to do is throw out the idea that it's like a photograph. It's not. A way better way to think about it, it's like a sketch artist. It captures the main idea, the essence, but every single time you remember something, the artist is redrawing that sketch.
Okay, so fundamentally, memory is a 3-step dance. Think about it like a computer. First, you've got encoding. That's just getting the information into the system, like typing something in. Then you've got storage, saving the file. And finally, retrieval. That's opening the file back up when you need it. Sounds simple enough, right? But this is where all the magic and the mistakes happen.
And this right here is probably the most important thing to get. We don't just replay memories, we rebuild them every single time. Your brain isn't a hard drive playing back a perfect file, it's more like a Lego set, and you're reassembling the model from the pieces each time you think about it. And, well, sometimes a piece gets swapped out or put in a slightly different spot.
So how does that whole process even start? How does something go from just happening to becoming a memory? Well, it all comes down to your brain's filing system, and it's basically got 3 stages.
Think of it like this. Information floods in, gets held for just a second, and then your brain has to decide, is this important? If the answer is yes, it gets filed away for later. That's the whole journey right there, from sensory to short-term and finally to long-term memory.
First up is sensory memory. This is like a super quick, automatic flash of what's happening around you. It lasts for, less than 4 seconds. A perfect example? You know when you wave a flashlight or a sparkler in the dark and you see that trail of light? That trail isn't really there, it's just your brain holding onto the image for a split second. That's sensory memory in action.
Now, if you actually pay attention to one of those flashes, it gets bumped up to short-term memory. This is basically your brain's sticky note, or its scratch pad. It holds about, say, 5 to 9 things for maybe 30 seconds. You know this feeling well. It's what you use when someone rattles off a phone number and you're chanting it over and over again trying to find a pen.
And then, if that information is important enough, it makes the final leap. It gets promoted to long-term memory. This is the big one, the massive, deep archive of your mind. We're talking virtually limitless space, holding stuff for your entire lifetime. This is where you store everything from your first kiss to the fact that Paris is the capital of France.
Okay, so we've got this amazing, complex system for making memories. But what happens when we introduce a constant, silent distraction? Yeah, you guessed it. I'm talking about that phone in your pocket.
And this is wild. Studies show that just having your phone nearby, even if it's off face down on the table, it can seriously reduce your brain power and make it harder to form strong memories. Why? Because a part of your brain is literally using up energy just to tell you not to check it. It's a constant low-level distraction.
There is this one study that showed this perfectly. They had people take these tough cognitive tests. The group that left their phones in a totally different room, they did the best. But the group who had their phone on the desk, even face down, they performed the worst. Just getting it out of your line of sight or out of the room made a huge, measurable difference.
For all this talk about remembering, forgetting is just as important. Seriously, it's a totally natural process that actually helps keep our brains from getting overloaded with useless junk. So, where do those memories actually go when we forget them? Let's get into the science of it.
Well, it turns out there are a few main culprits. You've got the forgetting curve, this idea that we forget most stuff really fast if we don't try to remember it. Then there's interference. When a new memory pushes an old one out, like when your new password makes you forget your old one. But maybe the biggest one of all is what's called encoding failure. And this idea is kinda mind-blowing. A lot of the time when you think you forgot something, you didn't. Your brain just never actually saved it properly to begin with. The information was there for a second on that mental scratch pad, but it never got filed away into long-term storage.
You know this feeling for sure. Ever walk into the kitchen and just stop, having absolutely no idea why you're there?
blank stare, right? That is a textbook example of encoding failure. Your body was on autopilot, but your brain never actually encoded the mission.
All right, this is where things get really, really weird. We're talking about the fact that our memory, the very thing that makes us who we are, can be, well, shockingly unreliable. I mean, sometimes it just straight up lies.
So let me ask you a crazy question. Could you be convinced that you committed a serious crime when you were a teenager? A crime that never, ever happened? You'd probably say no way. But the research on this, it's absolutely jaw-dropping.
See, our memories can get twisted in a few different ways. You have flashbulb memories, which are those super vivid, emotional memories of big events. They feel perfectly accurate, but they're often full of mistakes. Then you have eyewitness mistakes, which are a huge reason for wrongful convictions. And then, the craziest of all, entirely false memories can literally be implanted into your brain. And no, that question I asked wasn't just a what if. It actually happened. In a famous study, researchers managed to convince normal, innocent adults that they'd committed a serious crime as a teen, and they did it in just a few hours of interviews. The people even started adding their own details to the fake memory. It just goes to show you how flexible our memories can be.
Okay, I know. All this talk about forgetting and false memories can be a little unnerving. So let's switch gears and end with something you can actually do. Because you're not just a passenger here. There are simple, proven ways to take the wheel and improve your memory.
So here are some of the heavy hitters. First off, pay attention, reduce those distractions. Yeah, put the phone in another room. Try chunking, which is just grouping info into smaller bites. Use spaced repetition. Study a little bit over a few days instead of cramming all night. And actually test yourself. Try to recall the information instead of just rereading your notes. Oh, and of course, those classic mnemonic devices always help.
So when you boil it all down, here's the big takeaway. Your memory is so much more than a dusty old photo album of your past. It's the architect building your reality right now. It's not perfect, for sure, but it is unbelievably powerful. So the real question is, how are you going to protect it?